Hector is a regular guy who just moved into a new house with his wife Clara in a remote countryside. He likes to occasionally relax in his garden and bird watch with his binoculars while his wife takes care of the home. Like a regular G. One day he comes home, spilling all his groceries in the driveway. He heads out back to greet his wife, then heads upstairs to try and get some rest after a long day. He can't sleep, so he picks up his binoculars to check on some birds before hearing the phone ring. His lazy ass tries to get his wife to answer it, but she is outside. So he picks up the phone but hears only a heavy breathing before the phone hangs up. He tries to ring the number back but ends up having to leave a message. Clara comes in frightening him and he drops the phone. Clara tries to get me demonetized by starting to fool around, but he finds the phone in time only to realize it was recording all along. Later the couple is in the backyard with Hector doing his regular bird watching, until he spots something in the bushes before Clara blocks him with her bum. He tells her to look but she cannot see anything. Hector takes the binoculars back and this time, bingo, he spots a young woman getting undressed until Clara interrupts him. She is heading to the store and he waits until the car is gone before checking back, but the girl is gone. Hector decides to get a better view, so he heads across the road where he sees an overturned trash can and a bicycle. He walks into the bushes where this time he can spot some feet. Getting close, Hector. He gets a better look. This time he sees an unconscious girl nearby before falling over a branch. As he gets up he sees her, fully unclothed and laying against a rock. He tries to wake her but she won't move, so he gets close and is about to go in for a feels until someone stabs him in the arm. Hector yells in pain and makes a run for it, hiding behind a tree. I'm sure he's shitting himself at this point. He tries to get a glimpse of who attacked him and spots a hand holding a scissors. Then suddenly a man with a bloodied, bandaged face, turns to him, holding his hands as binoculars. Hector takes off, trying to climb a fence until it overturns with him. Instead of running home as I expected, he heads further into the bushes and comes upon a building. He calls for someone but nobody answers, so he leaves, right? Wrong, he smashes the glass and heads inside like a normal person. He walks around what looks like a canteen until he sees a diagram on the wall. He walks in further and finds a first aid kit and bandages his wound. Further inside the building, he finds what looks like a lab and a walkie-talkie. He calls for anyone until a man responds wanting to know who the hell is this. Hector explains that someone is after him and he needs help, so the man tells him to stay where he is and he is on his way. The man on the walkie-talkie then asks him if the man after him is wearing a bandage on his face. He explains that he is seeing the man on the cameras and that he is coming inside the building. The man on the walkie-talkie tells him he will call the police but is unable to, saying that the lines were cut. Hector barricades himself inside the room but the man tells him that he needs to make his way to his location nearby and to hurry. Hector steps out into the dark but the lights on the path turn on. He hurries up the path and the man on the walkie-talkie tells him that the bandaged man saw the lighted path and to run for it. Hector sees the building that the strange man is in. He tells him to hurry as the man is on his way. Hector runs inside to meet the man named Nacho. Hector looks around to see a strange buzzing machine and Nacho tells him that he can get in there to hide. Hector looks outside to see a car approaching. The man in the bandages pops up at the window and Hector runs inside the machine that has a white liquid inside. Nacho then lowers the machine all the way. Hector is submerged in the white liquid but then immediately steps out after a flash of light. He sees Nacho staring at him and looks outside to see that it is day. He steps outside in disbelief. Nacho asks him who he is, looking confused. Hector walks away down the hill and uses his binoculars. He sees Clara but then he sees himself greeting her with the groceries he brought in earlier. Hector falls to his knees in disbelief. Nacho tells him that he went back in time. Hector wants to go home but Nacho stops him, telling him that he is already home. They both deduce that Hector only traveled a short distance in time, about an hour. Hector tries to explain to Nacho what happened and how they met, but Nacho says it's better for him not to know. While they walk back to the building down the hill, they head inside the building and Nacho tells him that he has a plan. He grabs a calendar nearby and begins to draw the same diagram Hector saw before, explaining what happened when he time traveled. Nacho then explains his plan to fix this. He tells Hector that he should hide in the building and he will head up the hill to configure the machine. Since his previous self will follow his same path, he will get him inside the machine and send him to the past and all will be well. What a plan. Nacho tells him that he will bring everything back to normal but Hector can't tell anyone because Nacho was not supposed to be there that day. After Nacho leaves, leaving the diagram hanging in the canteen, Hector tries calling his home. He hears the phone answer but he is too stunned to say anything before sighing and hanging up. The phone then rings but goes to voicemail and he can hear himself getting busy with Clara on the phone. Nacho comes out and hears the voicemail and is upset. He asks if Hector remembers getting the phone call and he says yes. Nacho tells him that he should stay where he is and let the events unfold, but Hector grabs some keys nearby and heads out in a car, leaving the compound. He drives until he comes upon a girl riding a bike in a red pants like the one he saw in the woods. He stops in disbelief but a red truck hits him from behind, running him off the road and into a tree. Hector is messed up, he has a huge gash on his face and blood everywhere. He checks the wound on his arm and a yucky white liquid spills onto the floor. He begins to wrap his face with the bandages, recalling everything that has happened to him before realizing that he is turning into the same man he saw in the woods. The girl in the red pants comes back to check on him. She then runs off telling him that she will call the police to help. Hector starts to recreate the same events from before. Why? Only God knows. He comes up to her on the side of the road and she says she is going to get the cell phone, but he begs her not to go. She gives him some water, then pulls out some scissors to help with the bandages on his face. And don't you see anything wrong, lady? She steps off to get her bike and Hector snatches her scissors. He lies to her, telling her that he needs her help, and she rests her bicycle beside some trash nearby to hear him out. Hector then sees a black coat and picks it up, telling the girl that he needs her help in the bushes. I don't know why she thought it would be a good idea to follow him, but she does, and he forces her to continue walking ahead of him, and she is nervous. Trust me. Hector tells her that he needs her to do something for him. He uses his binoculars to spot himself in his garden, but the girl takes off running. He chases after her and ends up falling and breaking his nose. He goes after the girl and grabs her, ordering her to do what he says. He tells her to turn her head and take off her top slowly, and he sees Hector one staring in the direction. He then orders her over to sit in front of a rock and take off her pants, and she realizes that Hector is trying not to look at her. She walks over to him and attacks him before running off. He catches her and the two fall over a ravine where she passes out. Hector carries her back to the spot, throwing away his binoculars in the process. He puts her against the rock before hearing Hector 2 approaching. Hector creeps up on himself and stabs himself in the arm. Hector 2 runs away while Hector chases him into the forest. He tries to do the same gesture as before to scare his other version, but Hector 2 is nowhere to be found. He tries it over and over again, but with no success. Finally he tries one last time and sees himself running off in the distance. Hector then hears a scream. He runs back to the rocks, but the girl is gone. He sees the lights to his house turned on and kicks down the fence before running inside. He pulls out the telephone line and heads up the stairs, and someone attacks him, knocking him back down. He heads back upstairs, but the girl locks herself inside a room. He breaks down the door and sees that she has run out onto the roof. Hector grabs her and pulls her off the roof, but when he checks, he realizes that it was Clara all along, seeing her coat and short hair. Hector backs away in terror and falls to the ground in tears. He then pulls out a walkie that Nacho gave to him to hear Hector 2 calling for help. He tells Nacho to lead him up to the silo and to make something up, and he will show up in a car. Hector jumps into Clara's car and heads back to the compound. He rams the front gates and gets out, then scares Hector 2 at the window. He then sits outside waiting. He hears the machine closing inside. Nacho then comes out and Hector runs inside. Nacho calls out to him, but Hector tells him that something went wrong and he needs to go back into the machine. Nacho tells him and shows him that the machine will not work as his previous trip used up all the power, but Hector realizes that a battery is missing from the machine, and gives Nacho a love tap with a crowbar when he lies. Nacho tells him that he threw it outside, and Hector removes his bandages and forces Nacho to go look. Hector explains that he wants to be able to go back and kill Hector 1. Then everything will be fixed, but Nacho tells him that makes no sense. Hector then realizes that Nacho had removed the battery from the machine even before he mentioned traveling back. He smashes Nacho with a crowbar, and orders him to explain. Nacho then reveals that another Hector 3 told him to do so. Nacho further adds that before this Hector showed up, Hector 3 was in the lab, and later explained that our Hector would try to use the machine again, and to stop him at all costs, because whatever he is going back to fix would fail. Hector learns that Hector 3 informed Nacho of his failure on the walkie-talkie and tries to change the future by throwing it away. They find the battery and head inside, and Hector gets into the machine and comes out a few seconds before everything happened, becoming Hector 3. He explains to a shocked Nacho that right now there are 3 versions of himself and he needs to get rid of the other 2 and needs his help. He tells Nacho that Hector 2 will come out of the tank soon and he should help him get to Hector 1. He hides and sees himself at the beginning of the movie climb out of the tank for the first time. He explains to Nacho that he needs to kill that version of himself and needs him to go through with everything in the movie. Hector 3 then heads back to the compound and asks Nacho to get him a truck just as Hector 2 is driving down the road. Hector then trails the now Hector 2 and sees the girl in the red pants pass him, so he knows Hector 2 has stopped on the road. Hector puts on his seat belt and runs Hector 2 off the road, but ends up crashing himself after turning over the garbage bin. Hector is totally messed up. He looks over to see that a walkie-talkie was inside the car and uses it to reach out to Nacho. He tells Nacho that he failed as he watches himself in the distance. He blames Nacho for even turning on the machine and for causing all this mess, and tells him to not let the man with the bandages get inside the tank. Hector then comes upon the girl running from Hector 2 and tells her that he won't find her here and tells her to sit, but she runs away. Later she comes back to get him, telling him that there is a house nearby. She helps him and he sees that it is his house. He is too weak to stop her and she helps him inside and leaves. Clara walks by and spots him. She tells him that a man with a bandaged face has broken down the fence and is coming inside. Hector realizes it is himself and leads her outside. He tells her to hide in the barn and not to come out. He climbs back into the house using a ladder and leaves the window open. Hector then picks up a table and throws it at Hector too, causing him to fall back down the steps. He heads to the girl and puts on Clara's jacket on her, telling her that she has to fool the man in the bandages while cutting her hair. He tells her to run into the attic while he heads downstairs and gets Clara. Totally given up, he leads her to the garden and the two sit as he hears the girl fall from the roof. Nearby, Hector too drives away thinking he killed his wife, to start the entire cycle over again. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more movies like this. Thanks for watching.